Hi, I'm Rebecca. For years, I've been building my tech company from the ground up while my parents acted supportive, until my 31st birthday, when everything changed. Sweetheart, you've done so well with your business, my mother said over breakfast at their sprawling estate. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped against her coffee cup. Your father and I were just talking about how proud we are. Thanks, Mom. It hasn't been easy, but the investment round finally closed. I smiled, cutting into my birthday pancakes. The company's valued at $12 million now. Dad lowered his newspaper, his eyebrows raising slightly. $12 million? That's impressive, Becca. And your personal stake? About $3.5 million in liquid assets, the rest tied up in company shares. I shrugged, not thinking twice about sharing this with my own parents. Smart girl, Dad nodded, exchanging a quick glance with Mom. Always were the brightest of the bunch. My phone buzzed. It was Marcus, my CFO and closest friend since college. Becca, are you sitting down? His voice sounded strained. What's wrong? You sound weird. Someone just withdrew all the money from the holding account. All of it. $3.5 million. Gone. The room seemed to tilt sideways. That's impossible. That account requires dual authentication. It was authorized properly. Your credentials and... He paused. And your parents' credentials as secondary signatories. I looked up to see my parents watching me, their expressions carefully neutral. Marcus, I'll call you back. I set my phone down slowly. Mom, Dad, did you withdraw my money this morning? My mother's smile never wavered. Darling, we've been meaning to talk to you about that. Your father's business has hit a rough patch. A temporary cash flow problem, Dad interjected smoothly. We'll pay it back, of course. You stole $3.5 million from me? My voice remained unnaturally calm. On my birthday? Stole is such an ugly word, Mom replied, dabbing her lips with a napkin. You've always been part of the family business. We signed those papers years ago. Those were emergency access credentials. For if something happened to me? Dad cleared his throat. Rebecca, you're overreacting. We raised you, paid for your education. I worked 3 jobs through college because you said it would build character. And look how well you turned out, Mom beamed. We need this loan right now. We've made some investments that are about to pay off big. Loan? You didn't ask. You just took everything. We're your parents, Dad stated flatly. We don't need to ask. I stood up, hands shaking. I need to go. Don't be dramatic, Rebecca, Mom sighed. Stay for cake. We can discuss repayment terms. As I grabbed my purse, my phone rang again. It was Vivian, my lawyer. Rebecca, the document tracking system just flagged something odd. Someone accessed and modified your corporate trust documents this morning. Did you authorize that? I stared at my parents, a cold realization dawning. No, Vivian, but I think I know exactly what happened. Marcus met me at my condo, his expression grim as he spread financial documents across my dining table. They've been planning this for months, he said, pointing to a series of small transfers. Testing the waters, seeing if you'd notice. I paced the length of my living room. I trusted them with emergency access. How could they do this? Some people change when they see money, he replied, his voice gentle but firm. The question is, what do you want to do about it? Get it back, every penny. I stopped pacing. What are my options? My doorbell rang. Vivian entered with a thick folder and a thunderous expression. I've reviewed everything, she announced without preamble. The good news? Their little scheme won't hold up legally. The bad news? They tried to alter your company's trust documents to give themselves controlling interest. Can they do that? They tried, Vivian smirked, her sharp eyes gleaming behind designer glasses. But they triggered about 15 different security protocols. Amateurs? The doorbell rang again. This time it was my Uncle Robert, my father's brother and longtime family financial advisor. Rebecca, your father called me, he started, looking uncomfortable. He said you were having a disagreement about family finances. Is that what he called stealing millions from me? A disagreement? I laughed bitterly. Now hold on. Robert held up his hands. Your parents built everything you have. Without their connections, Marcus interrupted. Rebecca built her company from scratch. Family helps family, Robert insisted. Your parents are just what? I stepped closer to him. Just criminals? Just thieves? They stole my money, tried to take my company, and you're defending them? They've always looked out for you, Robert said weakly. Show him. I nodded to Vivian, who handed Robert a document. This is the withdrawal authorization, she explained. Executed at 6:03 this morning while Rebecca was asleep. And this, she slid another paper toward him, is the falsified trust document they attempted to file. Robert's face paled as he read. I didn't know. Now you do, I said flatly. So are you here to help me or them? Robert sat heavily on my couch. What do you need? Everything you know about their finances, where they'd hide the money. They've been in trouble for years, he admitted. Borrowing from one investment to cover another. Your father's been chasing increasingly risky ventures. Perfect, Vivian smiled, pulling out her laptop. I've already filed emergency injunctions freezing the transferred funds. Now we need to track every dollar. I have something else, I said quietly, walking to my safe. I removed a small flash drive. Dad always told me to plan for contingencies. So I did. Marcus raised an eyebrow. What's that? Every conversation, every document, every signature. I've been recording everything since they first pushed to be added as emergency signatories. I handed the drive to Vivian. I had a feeling I might need it someday. You trapped them, Robert whispered. I nodded grimly, and they walked right into it. 3 days later, I stood in my parents' living room, the same room where they'd announced their theft so casually on my birthday. Rebecca! Mom rushed forward as if to hug me. I stepped back. We've been trying to call you. I've been busy, I replied coldly. Cleaning up your mess. Dad emerged from his study, looking haggard. Honey, we can explain everything. Please do. I gestured to the couch. Explain why you stole from your daughter. It wasn't stealing, Mom insisted, perching on the edge of a chair. We were protecting your assets. From what? My own decisions? From inexperience, Dad leaned forward. The market's about to shift. We were moving the money somewhere safer. Without telling me? Without asking? I shook my head. Try again. Fine. Dad's voice hardened. We needed it. My last 3 ventures failed. We're underwater on the house. Your mother's medical bills. Medical bills? I interrupted. What medical bills? Mom glared at Dad. Charles! She deserves the truth, Victoria. He turned to me. We're broke, Rebecca. Have been for years. Living on credit and appearance. And you thought stealing my money was the solution? I asked incredulously. Borrowing, Mom corrected. We raised you, sacrificed for you. Is it so wrong to expect something in return? Something? You took everything. We gave you everything first. Mom stood suddenly. Everything you are is because of us. No, I said quietly. Everything I am is despite you. Dad's face darkened. You ungrateful little... Careful, I warned. Think very carefully about your next words. Or what? He sneered. You'll cut us off? We're your parents. Not anymore. I pulled out my phone and pressed a button. Did you get all that, Vivian? Loud and clear, my lawyer's voice replied through the speaker. And so did the detective. Mom went pale. What detective? The doorbell rang. Detective Harmon entered with 2 uniformed officers. What is this? Dad demanded, standing. Charles and Victoria Bennett, Detective Harmon began formally. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of grand theft, fraud, and attempted corporate sabotage. You can't be serious, Mom gasped, looking at me. Rebecca, tell them this is a misunderstanding. Is it? I pulled out a stack of documents. I have records of every conversation, every time you pushed for access to my accounts, every promise that it was just for emergencies. Dad lunged toward me suddenly, grabbing my wrist. "You little fool! You have no idea what you're doing! Let go of me!" I pulled back as officers moved forward. "You think you're so clever with your trap?" he hissed, tightening his grip painfully. "You're nothing without us." The officers separated us, restraining my father as he continued shouting threats. "Add assault and making criminal threats to the charges," Detective Harmon noted calmly, as the officers led my parents away. I stood alone in their house, rubbing my wrist, listening to my mother's sobs fade down the driveway. "The prosecution has an airtight case," Vivian explained as we sat in her office a month later. "Your documentation was immaculate." Marcus nodded approvingly. "The financial forensics team traced every penny. They didn't just take your money. They've been skimming from your company for years through that emergency access." "What happens now?" I asked. "They're facing serious jail time," Vivian replied. "But their attorney has proposed a plea deal." "What kind of deal?" "Full financial restitution, including interest. A public admission of guilt, no jail time, but 5 years probation." I considered this. "And my money?" "Already recovered and secured," Marcus confirmed. "I've revamped all security protocols. No one but you has access now." The intercom buzzed. "Your parents are here for the settlement meeting," Vivian's assistant announced. When they entered, my parents looked diminished somehow. Mom's designer clothes had been replaced by a simple blouse and slacks. Dad's confident posture was gone. "Rebecca," Mom began tearfully, "please reconsider this. We're family." "Family doesn't steal from each other," I replied evenly. "We've admitted we were wrong," Dad said, his voice hoarse. "We'll repay everything." "You'll repay it because the court is forcing you to," I corrected him. "Can't you find it in your heart to forgive us?" Mom pleaded. "Everyone makes mistakes. A mistake is forgetting a birthday. Taking millions is a calculated crime." "We raised you better than this," Dad muttered. "No," I stood up. "You raised me to be exactly this. Someone who plans for contingencies, who protects what's hers, who doesn't trust blindly." "Sign the papers," Vivian instructed my parents. "Then Miss Bennett will decide whether to accept the plea recommendation." They signed with shaking hands, then looked to me expectantly. "I'll accept the plea," I said finally. "Not for you, for me, so I can move on." "Thank you, sweetheart." Mom reached for my hand. "We can start rebuilding our relationship." I pulled away. "There is no relationship to rebuild. You're not my family anymore, just people I used to know." "You don't mean that," Dad protested. "Blood is thicker than water, and trust is more valuable than either." I gathered my things. "Goodbye." "This isn't over," Dad called after me, his voice cracking. "You'll realize what you're throwing away." "Charles," Mom hissed, "don't make it worse." I turned back one last time. "It was over the moment you decided my money was yours to take." Detective Harmon was waiting in the hallway. "Miss Bennett, a word?" "Of course." "The DA wanted me to let you know. We found evidence of similar behavior with other family members and business associates." She handed me a folder. "Your parents have been running this game for years. You're just the first one to fight back." "I'm not surprised," I said, scanning the documents. "Patterns rarely start with $1 million theft." "There's something else," she hesitated. "Your father attempted to access your new accounts yesterday. He claimed he was just checking security." I closed my eyes briefly. So the remorse was an act. "People rarely change," Detective Harmon said gently. "The DA is reconsidering the plea deal in light of this." Later that week, Marcus, Vivian, Robert, Elise, and I gathered at my newly purchased penthouse for dinner. The view of the city sparkled through floor-to-ceiling windows. "The judge rejected the plea deal," Vivian announced, raising her glass. "Your parents are looking at a minimum of 8 years. "To justice," Marcus toasted. "And to you, Rebecca, the strongest person I know." "I couldn't have done it without all of you," I replied honestly. Elise squeezed my shoulder. "What my father said about family helping family? This is what he meant. Real family?" Robert nodded, looking slightly embarrassed. "I'm sorry I ever defended them." "You didn't know," I reassured him. None of us really knew who they were. What about the company? Marcus asked. The press has been relentless. Let them talk, I shrugged. Our quarterly numbers speak for themselves, up 22% despite the scandal. The investors were impressed by how you handled it, Vivian added. 2 more venture capital firms called today. Speaking of calls, I said, I got one from my cousin Teresa. Apparently my parents did something similar to her years ago. She's flying in tomorrow to give a statement to the DA. Family patterns, Elise mused. Breaking them is the hardest part. But worth it, I replied, looking around at these people who'd stood by me. I've learned something important through all this. What's that? Marcus asked. Trust should be earned, not assumed. And when someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. So what's next for Rebecca Bennett? Elise asked. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. Living well, building something even stronger, and never looking back. The best revenge isn't just getting even, Vivian noted wisely. It's moving forward while they stay stuck in the past. I'll drink to that, I replied, raising my glass. To moving forward. The next morning, I woke to news alerts blaring across my phone. My parents' scandal had made the financial press, their decades of fraud exposed for the world to see. Their social circle, the one thing they valued above all else, was disintegrating in real time. Marcus called, his voice excited. Have you seen the news? Your parents' empire is collapsing, and the company stock is soaring. Poetic justice, I replied, watching the sunrise over my new beginning. Have you ever discovered someone wasn't who you thought they were? What would you have done in Rebecca's place?